Words you shouldn't search for is a term that has come up on this channel numerous times over the years, usually with regards to various Japanese internet mysteries. Just like it sounds, these are terms that, if you plug into a search engine, will generally give you results you may regret. This could be gruesome images, a terrifying story that keeps you up at night, maybe some lost media, who knows. But if you look for it, you'll find something bad. And so, it's time for a new series. Let's dig into some of these infamous search terms and uncover just what they are, why they were put on the list and, if available, the truth behind them. Some are pretty gross, some scary, and others just interesting internet relics. Let's head on in. Gomen Ne Ora Mou. This particular phrase, which roughly translates to "I'm sorry, but I can't anymore," refers to the image you can see here. It's a crudely drawn picture of Crayon Shin-chan on a bright red background with all sorts of text on it. Most of these are character names, but then in a vague purple color you can just make out Gomen Ne Ora Mou. This ended up on the list not because the picture itself is creepy, but rather the story behind it. This picture started spreading throughout the internet in September 2009. It happened to spread at the exact same time that Crayon Shin-chan's creator, Usui Yoshito, went missing. On September 12, 2009, Usui's family reported that he went hiking but didn't return. When people saw this same weird image spreading online at the same time, many thought it was a farewell note from a mind that had perhaps broken. Maybe he didn't exactly go missing, but rather didn't return on purpose. Of course, people questioned the strange image. Could Usui really have made it? If so, why would this famous mangaka create it in paint and not draw it himself? After all, anyone could whip up something like this and post it anonymously on the internet to scare people. And then, almost 1 week later, on September 19th, the sad news came in that Usui's body had been found at the bottom of a cliff at Mount Arafune. People feared that maybe the rumors surrounding that weird picture were actually true. But officers found Usui's digital camera with him, and the final picture he took showed an image from that same cliff where they found him. It appeared that Usui didn't purposefully set out to end matters, but rather had an unfortunate accident and slipped from the cliff. It was a terrible tragedy, but by all accounts, an accidental one. So then, what was the truth behind the image? Well, in this case, the creator actually came clean after Usui's body was found. On October 9th, a few weeks later, a blog user posted that he was the person who made and shared the image. When he heard Usui was missing, he thought it could stir up some noise, which it most certainly did. The user was already actually well known as an internet troll at that point, so some had even suspected that he might have been behind it. And they were right. However, when the news came out that Usui's body had been found, the blog poster felt bad because he actually enjoyed Crayon Shin-chan, so he felt like he had to come clean. He was still amused, however, that so many people had fallen for the image. When I looked at news websites and threads, I saw that the image had been posted. There were even multiples of it being posted in threads. Simpletons spread the idea that, so this picture really was a farewell note then. And that's how the rumors of it being a farewell note spread across the internet. I'm honestly sorry. This time, I am actually reflecting a little on what I did. Aiseikai Hospital. I love this next one because it's such a beautiful dive into old internet history. Aiseikai Hospital. If it's a hospital on this list of terms you shouldn't search for, then something terrible must have happened there, right? perhaps some terrible crime took place in the past that would haunt even the most grisly true crime lover. Or maybe it's a terrifying abandoned and now haunted location. But no, it's none of these things. Aiseikai Hospital is on the list because of its, well, bizarre and very 90s website. Unfortunately, the website no longer exists, but thanks to the magic of the internet, you can still check out a re-upload today. Because as we know, once on the internet, always on the internet. Flashing lights warning if you do decide to check it out for yourself. But this website here, this is peak 1990s. It doesn't get any better than this. The magnificent neon text, the constant scrolling and blinking, the background MIDI and the gif of the cat with flashing eyes. It just doesn't get more pure than this. And yes, this was the official website for Aiseikai Hospital in Kuji City, Saitama Prefecture. You can still check through the links on this re-upload and take a nice trip back in time. If you're able to stomach all the flashing neon, that is. Now, what may surprise you about this is that this website actually lasted in this state all the way up until 2013. Yes, they only changed it just over 10 years ago. But during that time, this website was quite famous on certain corners of the Japanese internet for being, well, a living relic of the past that was quite an eyesore. And, the internet being what it is, rumors began to spread in the mid-2000s or so that this weird website was actually the work of a former patient of the hospital. Of course, it was no such thing, and it was simply made by the previous director. He certainly had a flair for it, that's for sure. The website these days is sadly rather normal, although certainly more easy on the eyes. But the flashing and scrolling neon that was the epitome of the mid to late 90s websites remains forever in our hearts, but also internet uploads. And probably our eyes too. Beware if you do look it up. That's a lot of flashing. Iruka no Yume de Sayonara. Finally this week, let's take a look at another website. This term roughly translates to goodbye in the dolphin dream. But like a lot of terms on the do not search list, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But here it's referencing the title of a website that you can still visit today. Well, at least another re-upload of the original, which is sadly now lost to time. You can find the link to both this one and the previous site in the description. But, as always, view at your own discretion. Now, this one doesn't assault you with flashing neon text on a dark background, but rather, you'll find a picture of a crudely drawn high school girl with pink hair. Back in the day, a sound reportedly played when you opened the website that said, "Kill me and move forward." But sadly, the sound doesn't seem to work today. But that is, of course, what got this website on the list. Click the girl, and gradually she gets more and more bloody. I won't show all the images here, but you can poke around the website yourself if you like. They're all crudely drawn, but the content is still kinda gross. And the more you click around, the more creepy stuff you'll find. People at the time were rather confused and even a little scared of this weird website, and nobody knew who made it, or even why. Over time, however, the truth came out, and it was perhaps a surprising truth to many. It's less of a surprise if you visit the website now because it straight up links to some YouTube videos. But it turns out this website was made by Atolls, a now famous composer and Vocaloid producer. He stated that he started the website as a teenager simply to learn HTML. That was it. And now it remains a creepy bit of internet history that you can still explore, thanks to the creator re-uploading it for posterity. Don't forget to check out his YouTube channel as well. Okawari mo iizo. This one roughly translates to you can have a second helping, referring, of course, to food. The reason this rather common phrase is on this list is because it refers to a specific comic where this phrase pops up, that was immediately followed by, well, something utterly awful. Kyoshiro 2030 first started publication in 1997 and ended in 2004. It's a manga that delves into the idea that genes determine your superiority, or inferiority, and the society that would evolve around that. There's a Third World War, and after that, a dictatorship arises in Japan based on eugenics and gender separation. The scene where this phrase appears is in chapter 39. We have a group of boys in military training, lined up at tables as someone screams that today they're allowed to eat curry and rice. An instructor tells them to eat well, and then another screams the now infamous line, "You can have a second helping." A young boy nervously heads over for some, as the instructor tells him that he doesn't need to hold back, he can eat even more. The boy cries in happiness as he chows down. But then, on the next page, the horror is revealed. The instructors look at their watches and then put on gas masks. Gas is released into the hall, and the boys are informed they're about to undergo poisonous gas training, as they all start throwing up. Yes, these boys undergoing strict training in a horrible dystopian future weren't actually receiving a moment of kindness from their superiors. It was, in fact, another part of their training. Only the strongest survive, and the boys are informed that the room has been flooded with a gas designed to make them vomit. But it's only at 31% strength. They won't die from it. However, the more they ate just now, the worse they're going to feel. Meaning, the boys who were weak and gave in and ate more food because they're always hungry, well, now they're going to suffer greatly for it. The boy who just had those refills, well, naturally he dies lying in his own vomit, despite everyone being told that it was painful, yes, but safe. Sadly, the instructors don't seem to care. If he wasn't strong enough, then he doesn't deserve to live anyway. And thus, that line that seemed to signify a rare moment of kindness, "You can have a second helping," was actually a portent of doom. And after that chapter came out, the line became representative online of something that seems nice on the surface but actually has something sinister hiding behind it. Numerous fandoms over the years have redrawn that scene with their own characters, and chances are good you've perhaps even seen some during your own travels, even if you weren't sure where it originally came from. Crazy Ghost. This one, in English, but written in katakana, refers to the image you can see here. It's a pretty standard search for this term and you'll find a scary image. But the history behind it is actually kind of interesting, so let's take a look. This woman, also known as the Red-Eyed Woman, was pretty popular back during the Flash heyday of games that like to throw surprise sounds and images at you to make you jump out of your chair and maybe just punch your monitor in fear. In particular, you could find her in the Nice Body Flash game, but she was also popular on Ni Channel, where she was used as a sort of rickroll. Users would try to get you to click the link, but instead of a British man singing a jamming song, you'd get jump scared by a woman with red eyes who may or may not also scream loudly at you at the same time, depending on whether you got the still image or were lucky enough to get the whole flash. These days, you can still find the image popping up in various places in videos, although it's a little less common than it used to be. But where did it even come from? Surprisingly, we do have the answer to this one. Users managed to track it down, and it turns out it came from a Chinese website several decades ago, where it was named Cute Ghost Girl Pet. It was then picked up by Japanese image boards, and the rest is history. Personally, I'm a big fan of the compilation video of the woman with red eyes screaming for 100 minutes straight. Flash may be dead, but her legacy lives on thanks to internet trolls doing God's work. Truly, we live in a blessed age. You can check the description if you wish to experience the glory of that for yourself. Yoshie. Finally this week, a nice, simple word you shouldn't search for. Yoshie. If you're into Japanese horror, and in particular indie horror games or cheap movies, this face no doubt looks very, very familiar. No, it's not the make me cute image, but as the name would suggest, this one is Yoshie, a character in the Kyofu no Mori, or Death Forest game. Death Forest was released in 2014. You play as a man enjoying a trip on his moped, who realizes he's not going to make it to his hotel in time, so he decides to take a shortcut through a forest. In this forest, you have to pick up 4 bike parts and then escape to beat the game. However, the forest is full of various enemies that will try to take you down, victims who were killed in this same forest. And Yoshie, perhaps now the most famous of all, was one of them. At any rate, being a chase game where you can get jump scared by this very large and very creepy face, Yoshie was a hit with players, and if you slap her name into Google, well, you'll be bombarded with all sorts of creepy, funny, and weird art for her. Being a large 2D head that follows you around in a 3D game certainly has some impact, that's for sure. Death Forest even has a full series of movies, so if you want some real-life Yoshie, you can find her there too. The original image used in the game is, according to the creator, Kaz, his own face that he photoshopped. In fact, it was this face that made him want to create the game in the first place. So you can kind of call her the real star of the show. At any rate, if you want to play this game for yourself, you can find a link in the description. But it appears a sort of revamp or remake is coming out on Steam the day after I release this video, so I'll leave that link in the description too if you want to check it out and get chased by Yoshie yourself. Nozaki corned beef. Nozaki corned beef is a bit of a strange term, as are the reasons it made it to the words you shouldn't search for list. In short, it refers to a creepy style of painting done by a particular artist in the early to mid-2000s, and over time grew to include other pictures done in that same creepy style. First things first, Nozaki's corned beef is a real product sold by Kawasho Foods in Japan, but that's not what this particular search term refers to, so it's best not to get them confused. It's actually unknown how this particular artist's work came to be called after an unrelated corned beef product, but perhaps the style reminded people of the art used on the tins. To this day, that part remains unknown. Either way, the artist in question has since been identified as Kajitani Ryo, who is still active online today. Back when this term originated, they ran a website called Midtown Madness, where they posted their artwork, and some, although not all of it, was quite creepy. Over the years, Kajitani has posted their artwork on numerous websites and profiles, many of which have since been deleted, and they often change names when they start a new profile as well. You can, however, find some of their older work still available on their current website today. I'll include a link in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. When this term first started picking up steam, people were unaware of who the artist was, however, and so there was some crossover with another term you shouldn't search for, Atashi wa Mou Oyome ni wa Ikemasen, due to their creepy similarities. I'll cover that term later on, so don't worry. Some people theorized the works came from a mentally ill patient. Others assumed it was just the work of a knee channeler. However, it later came to light that they were Kajitani's works, and Kajitani paints a wide variety of images, not just creepy ones. In fact, Kajitani reportedly mentioned how uncomfortable they were with the search term, and people using their images in such a way. They were even reprinted without permission in horror magazines. But their stance on that seems to have changed since they are now using the term themselves when tagging their work, and they have even added it to their profile on art websites. At any rate, while it remains unclear why this particular term came to be used to represent Kajitani's work, the particular images in that style, back before people were aware of where they came from, came to collectively be called Nozaki corned beef. A term still used today for images not just by Kajitani, but by anyone done in that particular style as well. Hikkoshite kara Futoukou. I'm a big fan of terms like this next one, or rather what it refers to. Hikkoshite kara Futoukou can be roughly translated to skipping school after moving, and in this case it's referring to a video. The full title is rather lengthy and translates roughly to I went to the house of a high school girl who stopped coming to school after moving and was astonished at what I found. Which, let's be real, is rather lengthy in any language, and so the search term was shortened to this. The video is roughly 3.5 minutes long and shot in vertical format, uploaded to YouTube on 28th December 2017. You can find a link to it in the description if you want to watch it for yourself, and I highly recommend you do, because it is indeed pretty creepy, even if you don't understand what's being said. It starts with a group of high schoolers filming each other and wishing their friend, who isn't there, the girl from the title, a happy birthday, and then they decide to head over to her house to surprise her. They're shown inside by the girl's mother, and they get a cake ready before heading into her room. Inside, they find it dark, and the girl is facing a wall, Blair Witch style. She then, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the video yet, rushes at her friends and growls like a zombie, before the camera spins to find the mother now staring deadpan at what's happening. And that's that. It's a jump scare video, and honestly quite well made, and rather creepy if you go into it unawares. As such, it was quickly added to the words you shouldn't search for lists, with a slightly higher than average scare rating. So what's the truth behind this video? Who made it? Where did it come from? Is it real? Well, of course not, and the truth is surprisingly easy to find for this one. It was made by the YouTubers Mizu Tamari Bond as a special horror surprise project, and you can watch their making of video for it on their channel. I love this type of video, so it's quite the worthy addition to the list if you ask me. Fancy Island. It's not quite Fantasy Island, but close enough. This one refers to a particular Japanese website called, you guessed it, Fancy Island, that presents itself as something cute and bubbly, but very quickly proves itself to be anything but. The website still exists and has even updated to JavaScript from Flash, so you can continue to use it today. And you can find the link in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. You'll immediately be greeted with a cute girl dressed up like a cat, who is apparently the 10,016-year-old Mimi. She likes collecting fancy goods, and there's also some text informing you to read the warning images before you proceed any further. There's even an English version of the website, so there's nothing stopping you from heading over right now to check it out. In the website's own words, this website is a haunted house that aims to solve the mystery of each page and go to the gallery. The pages after the main menu will be followed by a page of amazing horror. If you are not good at scary things or have heart disease, please refrain from viewing the pages after the main menu. At its most basic, this is a bikkurikei site, the type of site designed to jump scare you a lot. As you click through the various images and such, you'll be subjected to all sorts of horrors, sudden loud sounds, and all that good stuff you'd expect from a site like this. But it's not just random scares. You are actually meant to push your way through the website, figuring things out through trial and error until you reach the end. This involves things like choosing the right door, finding keys in chests, etc. You'll undoubtedly fail and get jump scared by loud noises quite a bit, but you can just click the back button and try again until you succeed. I've played through it a bit myself and didn't come across anything truly horrifying, but the sudden loud noises sure do get you sometimes. I've seen many describe it as a digital haunted house attraction, and that actually sums it up quite well. It seems the website is still periodically updated with new scares as well, so I highly recommend checking it out for a neat piece of creepy Japanese internet history. And if you manage to make your way all the way through to the gallery, let me know. Atashi wa Mou Oyome ni wa Ikemasen. As I mentioned in the Nozaki corned beef section of the last video, that particular style of art was often confused with another term from the words you shouldn't search for list, this one being Atashi wa Mou Oyome ni wa Ikemasen. Roughly translated, this one means I can no longer be a bride, and it refers to the image you can see here. Chances are good you've seen this image before, but it was probably being associated with something else. These days, you tend to find this image associated with the urban legend of Tomino's Hell. I have an entire video on that poem if you want to check that out, but when it comes to this specific image, it seems someone online started associating it with the poem in the early 2000s, and that association has stuck throughout the years. But what's the truth behind this image? Why is it on the list? First of all, it should be pointed out that in Japanese, there's a space between Atashi wa Mou and Oyome ni wa Ikemasen. Normally, these words wouldn't have any spaces between them, but because this is the title of a piece of artwork, that is how the artist specified it should be spelt. The artist of this piece is Tatsushima Yuko, and although she hasn't posted for a few years, she does have a Twitter account where she talks about the image, the title, and the meaning behind it. It was made on September 29th, 1999, and comes in at 180 centimeters by 90 centimeters, so it's quite large in person. Basically life-sized. According to Tatsushima herself, I was 24 when I painted this picture, and I was being followed by a man who was mentally unstable. This painting expresses both the man's behavior and my trauma from an attempted assault in my past. It shows my determined rebellion against all sex crimes. Yet, despite this, at some point in the early 2000s, this image started to be commonly shared around message and image boards as a scary image. Although it was often shared with the title, although mistakenly without the space, the artist remained unknown to many. Some claimed it was the work of a mentally ill patient, or that it was the same artist behind those Nozaki corned beef images. And then at some point it also came to be associated with the poem/urban legend Tomino's Hell, and is still often shared with that story to this day. It's also not uncommon to find it on scary image websites, videos or collections today either. Yet, even with the truth behind this image now more commonly known, that didn't make the image any less scary for some. In fact, it made it even more terrifying, rooting that fear in something far more real and traumatic. Either way, Atashi wa Mou Oyome ni wa Ikemasen remains a word you shouldn't search for, and this is why. Don't look for Wally. Where's Wally, or Waldo, depending on where you come from? That fun little guy in the white and red striped clothes and glasses that you have to find in various locations is known as Wally or Sagase in Japanese. But this particular term asks you to please not do that. Wally or sagasanai de. Don't look for Wally. Why? Well, a terrible surprise awaits. This one's a bit of an internet classic, so perhaps you've already seen it before. It comes from that golden era of Bikkurike flash games, or the infamous jump scare era, where you would play a seemingly innocuous game and then suddenly, out of nowhere, you're hit with a very loud sound and scary image. In this case, Wally or Sagasanai de was released in the early 2000s, so it was a staple for people of my generation way back in the day. It begins very simply with the word start, ? in the middle, and once you click that, some carnival music will play. After 10 seconds or so, the music fades out, and you're left with blissful silence as you search for Wally. Then, around the 30-second mark or so, you get slammed with a jump scare. As always, check the link in the description if you want to play it for yourself. Flash may be gone, but thankfully, we have websites that saved games like this from disappearing forever. And these days you can find all sorts of sequels that use different images and screams to scare you, and reactions to the game are almost a genre in and of themselves. Maybe the real Wally was the monitors we punched along the way. Hakkyou Set. This particular term is a riff on the Happy Meal set, replacing the word happy with Hakkyou, the Japanese word for madness or insanity. You'll soon see why. In particular, it refers to an ad that aired during January 2011, which you can see in the background here. So, this particular Happy Meal set came with a SpongeBob toy that would talk. And the issue wasn't so much the toy, but rather the children in the ad reacting to the toy. Their expressions and screaming and jumping up and down all over a small toy that spoke was considered so over the top that people were, in a way, put off by the ad. Of course, it was massively popular online and people had lots of fun mimicking or just plain making fun of it. People also dubbed it the Unhappy Meal set, because if you watch the ad without sound, it often looks like the children are actually getting upset or even angry at the toy, not enjoying it or having fun. It's also important to note that, at the time, SpongeBob wasn't yet hugely popular in Japan. But after this ad, well, that certainly changed. And more people from the general public came to learn his name and game. So, in a way, you could say the ad was successful in other ways. But regardless, it caused such a stir online that it was quickly pulled from the air and entirely erased from the official website as well. Of course, nothing ever truly disappears on the internet, and it's incredibly easy to find the ad these days. It also became quite the meme, with people making their own videos in the same style, making even more horrifying edits, or even just making plain old fan art of the Hakkyou Set. Such impact. According to rumors on the internet, the kids involved in the ad also gave up on their acting careers after that, although I've also seen rumors that one of them recently became a content creator, although I was unable to find any concrete information on that one. Either way, they certainly left their mark, and somehow ended up on the forbidden search terms list at the same time. All for getting way too excited about a SpongeBob toy. Impressive. Matsuyama Dokuhara. This term refers to a real place, the Matsuyama Hospital in Ehime Prefecture. This hospital opened on July 1st, 1966, and it has various departments such as respiratory, digestive, orthopedic internal medicine, as well as rehabilitation facilities. Sounds like a regular hospital, right? So, if it's on the forbidden search terms list, something terrible must have happened there, right? Well, not really. This is a bit of a strange case. The Dokuhara in this phrase is a shortened term for doctor harassment. In other words, patient abuse. Doctors treating their patients badly. It's unknown why, but at some point, someone created a website to slander the hospital and specific doctors associated with it. But it also wasn't just one website. This person, or persons, created numerous sites disguised as review sites of the hospital. But once you clicked them, you were subjected to all sorts of horrific and even sometimes adult images. Reportedly, a lot of these images were quite gruesome, although there was some creepypasta content mixed in as well, such as Jeff the Killer. The SEO for these websites ensured that various search terms would take you to them, such as Matsuyama Hospital and Matsuyama Hospital online reviews. As such, if you were looking for this hospital online, chances were good you'd find yourself on this grotesque site, or sites, instead of the real one. In fact, these sites were ranked so highly in searches that the actual hospital was, for a time, only the third or fourth result. Of course, the hospital themselves eventually became aware of this, but it seems the sites existed for years before they were alerted to what was going on. From what I could dig up, they didn't realize until 2020, so this is a rather recent happening, all things considered. They then set about having the sites removed, and while they were mostly successful, it also began a sort of online whack-a-mole, where each time they got a site removed, the creator simply uploaded another. In any case, if you plug these terms into a search engine today, you'll probably be safe. Probably. Last I checked, I only got hits from the actual hospital and a few blurred images. Perhaps they've finally been successful in getting them all taken down. And as for why someone created these websites, well, that still remains unknown. Mermaid in the Manhole. If you're a fan of gross movies, then chances are you already know what this term is referring to. Mermaid in the Manhole is a movie in the Guinea Pig series from Japan. This is a series of 6 horror films that tend to focus on, well, gross stuff. Gore, torture, mutilation, etc. Not my type of horror, but I know they're popular with some. At any rate, this film is considered one of the more, well, disgusting films of the series, and it was supposedly found in the house of actual serial killer Miyazaki Tsutomu after he was arrested, so it certainly has a nasty association in Japan. This film was made in 1988, and follows an artist in Okinawa who finds a mermaid in a sewer. She's covered in boils, and the artist decides to take her home to nurse her back to health. But she continues to get worse and worse, and he uses her wounds to paint a portrait of her as well. It gets a lot worse with the body horror, but at any rate, it's a definite term you shouldn't search for if you don't want to come across the gross images. The VHS version of this film was eventually banned in Japan in the 1990s. But then in 2005, the entire series was released on DVD overseas. So if you really want to watch it, well, it's now out there. At any rate, this is a pretty worthy addition to the list, if only to warn you of the grotesque images you're likely to see, even without watching the film. Never-ending summer holidays. In Japanese, Owaranai Natsuyasumi refers to, of all things, an online novel. But this novel is most definitely not for the faint of heart. This story was first uploaded in 1997 and continued well into the next year, with 46 chapters and one bonus story making up this, interesting piece of work. Although the original page no longer exists, thanks to internet archiving, we can still view a snapshot of it. It begins with some character introductions. Mayuko, a first grader in high school, is the main character, and then there are 3 other girls, each in a different grade of high school, and the older brother of one of these girls. The prologue tells us that these 3 girls are spending their summer holidays in a holiday home, and they've decided to take one of this year's first graders with them. After going through some junior high graduation albums, they decide on Mayuko, noted for her beauty. And then, well, it's over 40 chapters of these girls and the older brother torturing this girl in various gruesome and horrific ways. And if that isn't enough, several chapters also come with illustrations depicting exactly what happens in the story. So, who created this bizarre piece of work? Well, that remains a mystery, but they went by the nickname Cubic, and on their profile they state they're 300 years old, from China, and they're something like a scientist. They're also into sadism, claiming that this is the root of kindness and compassion, and by utilizing this, you can understand when others are in trouble and immediately help them. Yeah, okay, sure, why not? At any rate, their website is also full of other stories of a similar nature, but it's this one that's perhaps most well known. Of all the terms featured on this list so far, this one's definitely up there as a very extreme view at your own risk. But thankfully, the term never-ending summer holidays is also broad enough that if you search for it today, you'll find a whole bunch of other stuff instead. And you'll really need to dig to pull this online novel up. It remains an extreme look into a niche part of internet history, however, and thanks to archiving, you can still view it today. Anago-san. Let's kick this week off with a rather interesting term. This one isn't necessarily scary, but it was certainly bizarre enough to end up on the list either way. It generally comes with a danger level of only 1 or 2, depending on where you look around, so that should let you know we're not in for anything gross or horrifying at the very least. Anago-san. This one is the name of a character from the anime Sazae-san. Sazae-san started as a comic way back in the 1940s, and an animated version started in 1969. If you thought One Piece was long-running, it's got nothing on Sazae-san. In fact, Sazae-san currently holds the Guinness World Record for longest animated TV series in the world, coming in at over 2,700 episodes and still airing. Now, Anago-san is a somewhat minor character on the show, being a co-worker of Masuo, who is Sazae's husband. He's known for being a bit of a troublemaker, but mostly he's known for his distinctive appearance with rather thick lips. He's styled as a typical businessman and looks to be in his 40s or so, but surprisingly is actually only in his late 20s. So how did this otherwise unassuming character from TV's longest running animated show end up on the list of terms you shouldn't search for? Well, it seems Anago has, or had, a rather dedicated fan who created quite the bizarre website in adoration of his voice. This website first went up in 2003, so it has been around for over 2 decades now. And as you can see, well, it's certainly something from the internet of old. But even for that time period, it's kinda weird. And if we use the Wayback Machine to see how it looked then, well, it's just a bunch of links that say Anago-san, with a repeating picture of his wife as the background. Now, if you click those links, you'll be led to numerous sound bites of Anago-san taken from the show. Anago is voiced by Wakamoto Norio, who you may know from pretty much any anime in existence. The guy is about to turn 80 and has starred in seemingly everything, so it's not like Anago is voiced by a little-known actor. At any rate, the webmaster's dedication to Anago in particular was certainly a thing, and the website was updated with more and more sound bites all the way up until 2023, all of them linked simply with the word Anago-san. That's 2 decades of hard work on this fascinating but odd website. At some point, the webmaster even became aware their site was on the list of terms not to search for and posted about it on the website. But it seems they just love Anago-san too much to care. Now that is some pure dedication. Imeken. Not to be confused with the word Ikemen, meaning a handsome guy. This one, Imeken, is generally followed by the word trauma, so Imeken trauma. But it is just as often used as a single word by itself too. This particular word you shouldn't search for refers to the image you can see here in the background, and it comes with a danger level of around 3. A solid middle of the pack. Chances are, if you're on the creepy side of the English internet as well, you've already seen this one. But for now, let's look at it from the Japanese angle. So, it's unknown when exactly it occurred, but at some point over the years, typing in Imeken trauma resulted in bringing this image up. A lot. If you search for it now, it will still bring this image up. Imeken is short for Imeji Kensaku, or image search. At some point, this image caused so much trauma that it became associated with searching for traumatic images itself. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really too involved in the English-speaking world of creepypastas, scary images, and all that stuff. So if you are, and you want a lore drop in the comments, please feel free. But unlike many creepy images over the years, the origins of this one are very easy to trace. It comes from a DeviantArt post that was made on June 9th, 2005, that you can still view today. Check the description for a link. It's titled Tongue Boy, and even includes a link to the original image. The original, titled Joey's Tongue, was shared just 5 days before, and was apparently a photo of the photographer's friend. Like many terms on this list, this one has been around for decades. Female Sage. Let's end this week with yet another creepy image from the dark depths of the internet. This one is known as the Onna Kenja, or Female Sage. Generally, if you search for this term, you'll find lots of pictures of the lovely blue-haired character from the Dragon Quest series. But at some point, a dark and frightening image also started turning up amongst the search. You can see that image here. Now, it turns out that, as usual, we have Ni-channel to thank for this one. This one can be traced back to 2001, and a thread on Ni channel where people were sharing images of the lovely sage from Dragon Quest III. If you're familiar with my channel, then you'll no doubt be aware of how much Ni channelers love a good troll. And one of them hid a link amongst the blue-haired sage images that instead led to this one. The idea was basically to jump scare anyone expecting a cute anime-looking girl with this instead. And it appears it was effective, as it didn't take too long for it to start randomly appearing in image searches for the female sage either, like a creepy Russian roulette. Maybe you'd get a cute girl. Maybe you'd get jump scared by a super close-up of someone's bulging eyes. As for where this image came from in the first place, that's also not hard to find, as it's literally right there in the link. Although the website no longer exists, you can still visit the page through the Wayback Machine, and it was shared in 1997 on a medical page for endocrinology. The image is of someone who has Graves' disease, an autoimmune disease that often causes people's eyes to bulge, like in the picture. Love and Courage and Kashiwa Mochi. A bit of a strange name, but this one refers to a free puzzle game that came out in 2006 and was also a winner in the 8th annual 3-minute game contest. The rules are simple. Like many games of this time, you move the sweets around the screen and try to make rows of 4 so they'll disappear. There are bars on the side that keep track of time, and if the bar maxes out, it's game over. Although you can reduce that slightly by making the sweets disappear. There's also a very basic story to go with it. Ai-chan, the girl on the side, wakes up in a strange forest one day, and then a boy suddenly appears who starts chasing her. As she's running, sweets also start falling from the sky. Ai-chan happens to be a big fan of sweets, in particular Kashiwa Mochi, as the title would suggest. So, how did a rather innocent-looking puzzle game end up on the Do Not Search list? Well, of course, it's because of the hidden story within the game. As you play through it, getting game over after game over, more and more of the story, and the truth, is revealed. It turns out that Ai-chan is currently sick in the hospital, and she's unable to eat any sweets there. As for that boy she suddenly runs into, the one chasing her, well, of course, he's a shinigami. When you get a game over, medicine and syringes will rain down the screen, and the boy turns into a skeleton as well. And the more you play, the closer the boy gets. The closer he gets to taking Ai-chan away, for good. But all is not lost. You can save Ai-chan from this shinigami trying to take her to the other side. If you eventually get a score of 200,000 points, after first obtaining the good ending, which you get from a score of 50,000 points, then you can get the true ending, where Ai-chan is safely released from the hospital, presumably now free to eat all the sweets she wants and not be dragged away by a shinigami for it. From what I can tell, this game also used to be available on iPhone and Android phones in English, under the title Love Mochi, but support ended in 2017. You can still download the PC version, however, and if you're so inclined, you can find a link to that in the description. Tonari no Torotoro. No, you didn't mishear that. A play on My Neighbor Totoro's Japanese name, Tonari no Totoro. This one is instead called Tonari no Torotoro. Torotoro describes something sticky, melty, pulpy, etc. So that probably gives you some idea of what we might be looking at here. Specifically, it refers to an image that was done by the artist JEMG, which you can see a blurred version of here in the background. It's honestly not that bad, but I'm going to err on the side of caution just in case. If you want to check it out for yourself, the link is in the description. It's a redone version of the movie's poster, and was shared on DeviantArt on June 17th, 2007. In this version, Satsuki stands under an umbrella that's covered in blood while holding a gun. Next to her stands a horrifying version of Torotoro, also covered in blood, his mouth open wide with sharp teeth sticking out. And inside you can see, well, presumably body parts, hence the Torotoro. I dare say this image is pretty famous even outside the Japanese internet. The artist isn't Japanese after all. But it's also interesting to note that while the original image says Tonari no Torotoro on the side in Japanese, if you do a general search on Google or whatever, most of the images that pop up now will say Tonari no Torotoro instead. It has been edited and shared quite a bit over the years, and numerous terrifying versions of Torotoro that have sprang forth since then have also been placed under the same search term umbrella. The level of this board is too low. A bit of a mouthful this one, but it comes with a hefty warning level of 5, and for good reason. This particular phrase comes from a post shared on the JSON occult boards on April 1st, 2020. That means it's rather recent in terms of most of the phrases you'll find on this list. At any rate, the title of the thread was, "The level of grotesque images on this board is too low." The original poster basically went on to call everyone cowards, who couldn't stomach real guro images, and they were babies just for sharing illustrated ones. And so, he shared a real image instead. Of course, I'm not going to show it here. I'm not even going to blur it. If you've seen real grotesque images on the internet before, well, you can imagine for yourself. At any rate, this then goaded other users into sharing real grotesque images, rather than just illustrated ones. I value my eyes and my channel, so I'm not going to show any here. And I dare say this is actually a term that's worthy of being on the list. You will see horrifying things in this thread, and it's not for the weak of heart or stomach. If you search for this term online today with the word grotesque in it, like the original thread title, you will still find images you'll never be able to unsee. So, this comes with the highest warning. If you search for it without that, you'll generally come across the must not search websites and videos talking about it. But usually, that's about it. According to commenters, there used to be more images when you looked this phrase up a few years ago, but now they've mostly disappeared. Either way, the phrase became somewhat of a meme over on Go Channel, although for the most part they've avoided posting the same types of images with it. But what did you guys think of these terms? Do you have any that you'd like me to explore? Let me know in the comments below, and if you'd like to help support this channel so you can see more content like this, please consider hitting that join button down below as well. Every bit of support really helps. Thanks guys. I'll see you again next time.